he mihi nui kia koutou he pai ana ki te a koutou katoa. He tino hariko ai ka tai mai kei kuna i ki tēnā kanohi ki te tautoko te kaupapa o tēnei rā mo te wā katoa. Te Ao Māori ora, he mihi nui ki ngā mana whenua nō reira tautoko te kororo I mua. Kia ora everyone, it's great to be here in Pōneke, to come down. Oops, let me just move away from that. So I've arrived here and been privileged enough to come and join you and have a share my kororo. And I just want to acknowledge I've just been in Te Tahi Bay because we've just, one of our Samoan relatives have just released a Samoan waka a launch, which is quite amazing. So I'm doing the Pacifica as well. So for Pacific fans, it's nice to be here to tautoko that as well. But I just want to korero really around a Te Ao Māori perspective that I hold around wahine Māori and the whare tangata. And I want to acknowledge all the atua and wahine. I want to acknowledge hene ahu hene titama, hene nui te poa, also with Papatūnuku. So I want to bring that into the space continuously, like I laid out this morning, that opening karakia was to acknowledge, the holders of the reproductive opportunities. And so I want to acknowledge that, bring them into the space. And as a wahine Māori who carries a kauai, my kauai also represents as representation of all those atua wahine and tupuna, because we're reclaiming what is our indigenous natural practices, and in my kauai I'm aligning to that maternal line and acknowledging all the wahine that went before me and all their greatness and amazingness and intelligence and conscious thinking and their confidence and competency, because with the impact of colonisation and the world we are continuously been exposed to, there's this whole threat that is wahine or the holders or the kaitiaki of the whare tangata, that we actually don't know what we're doing, that we somehow need males or white males to tell us what to do. We need the church to tell us what to do. And so I, as Indigenous, come from a line of amazing, incredible, talented, very competent wahine. And so it's embarrassing and disgraceful to continually promote a perspective that we really need someone else from another culture or another cultural perspective or another dominant culture's perspective to continuously oppress us and remove any greatness that we were born with. So I just want to acknowledge that first and continue promoting that. The other lead into that is that when we're talking about reproductive freedom or choice or rights, I want to contextualize my living in the reality that my mother is an oppressed Māori woman, and in her family she was raised by beautiful tupuna, but she was from the generation where she got beaten. So these stories might not be new to you, and so her parents who spoke te reo from home, grew up on the whenua, raised a taonga, took care of her. They had to, for survival, encourage all their children to be more tauiwi or learn the colonial way so they stopped getting beaten. So that's the environment that my mother was raised in. And then my father, who's Samoan, came to Aotearoa. So he's from a Solent country, speaks his language. He's a Samoan male, but he also comes from a very white background. So his great-great-grandfather was an English person who was actually instructed as part of the Queen's Council to go to Samoa to meet the natives of Samoa and transform them and transition them into the church. So my father was raised in that mindset in Samoa, so as a male, he had quite a lot of privilege when he arrived in Aotearoa with that privilege to be shocked into Aotearoa where he was supposed to be a tūtuna and degraded. And so he also experienced such racism And so he kind of leaned on his English teachings and his English rights, even though as a brown person he was denied it. So I'm contextualizing that so you know the world I was raised in. And so being raised in there and born into that, and we talk about intergenerational transition, I was born into that in my spirit state before I was even delivered into the world. So I was born into a colonial environment with all the negatives, and into a space where wahine was already at a point where you weren't valued. And then I was born into a Christian environment. Not that my dad was conscious about that, but then I had that layer. So there's many layers that we're born into that influence our context of living. And so in that, as a person who kind of evolved and discovered myself, and then later discovered as an Indigenous person that the world wasn't embracing us, and being from South Auckland, Otara, that just added another layer. So learning about that, and learning that as a wahine, I wasn't given the freedom, and I wasn't given the equal opportunities that my dad had. I was definitely handed all the treatment that my mother received. That was an instant. That wasn't even, you didn't even ask for it. Everyone would layer that crap on you. But the benefits that my dad received as a male, or even belonging to a white line, I didn't inherit that. And so those were the struggles growing up. And so very young, I already decided I didn't want to follow a church or a Pacific Island kind of infused Christian belief that women should give birth. And so it wasn't really something that I consciously wanted to do. And then as I moved back into Te Ao Māori, I realised that I didn't really need that, because we have a belief that Wairua transcends everything. And so I just connect with Wairua and support other people to transition that into maybe a human being if they choose to. And if they choose not to, the Wairua still exists, and the beauty of it is that it doesn't get written off, it doesn't get ignored, it's not like it didn't exist. And so I went through that, and then I happened to get pregnant, because some things happen, and I worked with that, and I went through counselling, and then I walked through the whole dilemma of bringing a child into a world where I as a woman wasn't even valued. I as a Māori and Pacific Island woman was less valued. And so those were the dilemmas of even bringing human life into the world. But I had the opportunity to go seek out support and work through my whakaaro so that I could determine what was best for me. And then during that, I explored Te Ao Māori, because there are some myths for people who think that Te Ao Māori doesn't believe in abortion because we're destroying life and disrupting the flow of life force. And so thankfully I had lots of tupuna whaia who raised me to believe that the Wairua exists before it even gets transformed into a fetus or a child. So the Wairua also exists when the human vessel does not form. So that helped me through it, which is very beautiful for a Māori woman to know that my choices isn't about ending life or condemning human beings, but it's about choosing how Wairua would be transformed. And if me and my body and my state of wellness is not wanting to transform that into a human vessel, I am able to do that and cared for. And so when I choose that pathway, I'm still loved, I'm still cared for. The atua don't ignore me. If anything, whānau who have the same belief system, if they are raised completely in it, surround you and make sure that you as a well human vessel are looked after, and that you never feel inadequate because you are a product of the atua. And so who wouldn't want to look after a product of the atua and keep growing there in the here and now? And then the Wairua goes to the realm of the heavens to be well cared for. So if you don't know, but the kauai that sits, the moko that sits on my kauai also represents the lower kauai, which is the living realm, and then I also connect to the upper realm, which is the heavens. So Wairua transcends through and beyond. the other thing I wanted to talk about, and I'll come back to that other korero not wanting to give birth, is that when I talk about the amazingness of wahine, we have the ability to karanga. And so karanga is the power to hold the living and the heaven realm together so that wairua can move back and forth. So that's wairua, not just humans. So I want to highlight that wairua is very essential and important, and if it transforms into a human being, that also is important. But if it doesn't transform into a human being, it doesn't mean that wairua is less significant. And we have the power and ability to do that as wahine. So we have that choice. And so in Te Ao Māori, and you can take what you need to, but I want to encourage a lot of Māori who some of the myths that if you have an abortion, you're disrupting the life and the transition and the journey of wairua. I just want to offer that alternative. And so I didn't, getting back to my story, I didn't want to have children, but then I fell pregnant. And I said I went through some journey of thinking about that, and then I decided that I would continue the pregnancy, and the biological other parent also agreed. And then 3 months later, I lost that pregnancy. And so I went through these emotions of anger, fear, and guilt and pain, because I didn't have any choice in that matter. And although people are like, it's not your fault, when you go through that, you still have those emotions. So I worked through that, it's called healing, and it's also traumatic, because lots of different stories come about, and then the trauma of everyone else's issues and discomfort get laid on you. So I had to work through that. And then maybe a year later I fell pregnant again. And so the emotional experience of trauma, of having a loss without any conscious decision making, again I felt the exact same things. I felt fear, anxiety, and I was just like terrified, and just the pain came up. And so I made a conscious decision not to transform that wairua into a human being. And that you still have to go through the complexity for that decision. And after that, I also felt, the pain, but also relief. Not relief that I didn't transform that wairua into a human, but relief that I got to choose and have some input. And so that was that experience. For someone who don't want to have babies, I've got multiple pregnancies. But the third year later, just automatic, I had another pregnancy, and then I went through the trauma of loss, and then I decided, okay, I will have this pregnancy, and so I gave birth to twins. The whole mothering thing and parenting was a different issue. Still working on that, but they're 28 years old now, and I love them, but it was a decision that I got to have, and I almost had a huge village to help me, because it's not something I wanted to participate in. Because really, part of the raising a child, the issue is about choice, but also it's about what's the support and care that supports you in making your decision. If you decide to follow through, who's going to be there? So I was privileged enough to have such a village, Samoan and Māori, come around me and take care and help me through the difficulties of raising children and twins, because I might have transformed this wairua into humans and delivered that, but the whole parenting is a whole different skill base and the resource, and it's exhausting. And so thankfully I had that. So I know those are some of the major issues that when you're having thoughts about reproductive freedom and choices. It's like, what's the other side that doesn't force you to make decisions that you could have options for? So that's the whole thing. You have ability to think it through. And so in my learning for Te Ao Māori, when my daughter got pregnant, the beautiful thing is that I raised them in the thinking that if wairua comes through you, you have full empowerment to decide your journey and the journey of the wairua that comes with you. But the wairua doesn't leave you. So the babies that I lost, the wairua I still talk to. Me and my children, when they were old enough, we had a ceremony to name those two wairua. the one that I lost and the one that I consciously decided not to transform, we named them. We gave a ceremony. We got tattoos with their names, so the rituals we came into play for healing. And so we constantly speak to the wairua, because their wairua still exist in my life. I haven't forgotten them, and I shouldn't have to feel guilty about it or anything. I celebrate them, my children celebrate them, their children celebrate them. So my grandchildren are around, but also my daughter got that choice to make decisions. And in Te Ao Māori, it's the way that we transitioned that was through the rituals and values and beliefs of a Māori worldview. And all of that was actually deconstructing the impact of colonial narratives that make her, or try to make her feel as a woman that she didn't have any entitlement, and to bring in those perspectives. So raising my children with a Māori worldview allowed me to not fight against, but to really enhance Te Ao Māori and the greatness that our tupuna created, so that we can have these choices and raise wairua and transform wairua. And make that into Māori. So that's my kōrero really. So I just want to share that from a Māori worldview, so we don't get lost in the colonial debate and argument, because that's also another objective of making us invisible. And then I hope that all Indigenous peoples who are still working through the decolonisation process can really connect with our Indigenous rituals and practices of not competing, undermining us, and especially wahine, elevating us. And that's why I acknowledge the tupuna and the atua wahine, because so many of our stories are written by white male historians who come from that background. So we're in a movement of actually claiming the space, claiming our stories, speaking about it, voicing about it. So I really am encouraged that you're all here, and I just say let's keep voicing it vocally. Let's not be invisible or silent. Let's do art in so many creative ways. But we are great beings, we are great wairua, and we can continue that. So that's me. Kia ora.